Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is a show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, you know exactly what to do. Like and subscribe over on YouTube, 5-star review on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Say something really nice about me and my incredible guest today. I have Anthony Dittmann. He is the founder of OmegaBall and former director of event operations at ESPN. Anthony, how you doing today, man?
I'm awesome. Loving this. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure is all mine. For anybody just listening, Anthony is rocking a San Diego State University hat, wearing it loud and proud. We got the Final Four coming up this weekend as of recording. I'm crossing my fingers for you, man. I think that would be such a cool story, right? This whole Final Four has been awesome. I couldn't ask for anything more.
No, it's truly incredible, and it's a great redemption for us because the COVID year, San Diego State was supposed to be a number 1 or number 2 seed, and the whole tournament got canceled. So we're pretty excited over here in San Diego.
Well, I'm rooting for you guys. I think it'll be cool. I think it would be fun to have a mid-major win. I mean, we've had them come very close, at least in my recent memory, but we got Florida Atlantic, San Diego State out on the one side. It would have been cool if they got split up, but we'll take what we can get, and we'll see what happens there. But, man, I'm very excited to talk to you about creating sports, right? We're watching March Madness. We're about to get up to the NBA, the NHL playoffs. We got so many incredible things. Opening day of baseball is only around the corner, right? So I want to understand what it's like running a sport, what you do, how you do it, what you did at ESPN. I mean, you were there for 15 friggin' years, man. I'm sure you learned a lot of things there. But the first question, Anthony, I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Man, sports it's obviously incredible. I mean, that's why we're all dedicated to being in this industry, but it's the ultimate dichotomy. I mean, it's comedy and drama. It's elation and depression. It's fanaticism and hatred. It's all the things, and it's both spectrums, or it's the complete spectrum of all things. And I think one thing that's fun to take a look at is how the largest producer of entertainment in the world, Hollywood, and their adoption of sports. So I think that's really an indicator of how powerful the story of sports is.
So let's talk about that a little bit, the adoption of sports by Hollywood. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of documentaries forever, right? Like ESPN 30 for 30s have been around forever, but now we're starting to see what's the Lakers one on HBO, Winning Time. Very interesting show. If you've might cross your fingers, might actually have the author of that book coming on the show soon. So we'll see what happens about there. But we have the Michael Jordan movie coming out, Air, that honestly I don't really care. So I hope everyone enjoys it if you go see it, but I'm not going to go pay to see that one in the theaters. But you're right, we're seeing a lot of that now coming through, some of these, based on a true story around sports. Why do you think that is, kind of being out there in the Hollywood, much closer to Hollywood than I am? Why do you think we're seeing a lot more of that?
Well, it's real reality. It's you can watch The Hills, which everyone says is half scripted, half reality, but this is real reality, and it's all things that most people can relate to, even if you're not a true sports fan. To the T of the definition, you're still familiar with some of these stories, or someone that is involved with them, or at least watching the story arc of any given team, player, or league. So, I mean, go back to Rudy. I mean, all these incredible films. Like, there's been hundreds of sports films that have come out of Hollywood, and most of them are pretty darn great. And then, to your point, getting into the documentary perspective of it, it's obviously that's a very hot category right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been seeing, since The Last Dance, it feels like they're constantly, ESPN and all these, all the Netflix series that are coming out with, Point Break or Breakpoint, whatever the hell they're calling that one. The Full Swing with the golf, obviously, Drive to Survive has been very popular for a few years now.
Yeah,
so it's interesting. Funny. Sorry?
Drive to Survive is a catalyst for a lot of these, certainly. So.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially gave F1 a reason to be watched here in the United States. Like, it was kind of nothing. It was dying over here, and then all of a sudden, media rights for it got insanely expensive because people were interested in the storylines and in an individual sport, right? Like that, and especially in a sport. Like, I don't know how you feel about F1 or anyone listening. Like, it's kind of boring in my opinion. There's like no passing, nothing really happens the entire time. It's kind of just the field stays stagnant. It's fun to watch. I've never gone 250 miles an hour, so it's fun to be on board with those guys. But that has definitely increased the popularity to a very, very high level, and it's because of the real life drama. It's because of the comedy. It's all these things that you brought up before.
Yeah, look at Wrexham too. I mean, it's great, and they're coming to San Diego. I already got my
I saw
tickets.
that. Yeah, did you? That's awesome, man. Yeah, I saw they're going to be playing Man United, which is kind of cool. Like, shout out to those guys for doing their thing. And Ryan Reynolds is already talking about buying potentially or being a part owner in the Senators, Ottawa Senators. So then the opportunity to make another film. I mean, we have all the Amazon ones. We can go on and on and on about all these things, but I'm kind of curious, like, from that perspective, how have you seen? I guess, like, I kind of want to segue this a little bit into what you did. So you were the events operations, director of event operations at ESPN for about 15 years, 98 to 13, give or take a little bit in there. How have you seen, and what have you seen in terms of, you know, all these things that we've been talking about? Let's include the TV, the on-field experience, all these things. What changed in just that period of time with these events that ESPN would throw on a, you know, obviously daily basis?
Well, it gave me great perspective, and I started out on work crew in 1997 and worked my way up to director of operations over several years, culminating as event director for the X Games in Aspen, Los Angeles, Barcelona, and Tignes, France. So had the opportunity to travel the world and meet the incredible people that are worldwide and are involved with sports and events. But, you know, a lot of people always accuse the X Games of being made for TV. Like, ESPN invented it. The executives that were around when I was there always, they never liked hearing that term, because we were truly creating a pretty fantastic event that was family friendly, that got hundreds of thousands of people on a given weekend, at least back in the day. And we happened to air it on TV, of course, TV being the catalyst for the sponsorship, because initially it was free. So that was the only way to subsidize the event, was you'd have this great event. It was free. It was on TV, and then you could sell sponsorship to it subsequently. But sitting in those meetings and being a part of those conversations, all the way from producing the event to hearing how we were going to program the event and what events were successful over the course of analyzing a week of ratings on the X Games. One of the funny ones is Step Up, if you're familiar with motorcycles. Step Up, which is motorcycles going over a high bar. From the on-site experience, it was probably one of the more boring events to watch, but it was simple and it was objective, because skateboarding, it's a subjective result, right? So having those objective outcomes is always pretty popular. And I think that's why cornhole is popular, because it's simple. You turn it on, you know exactly what's going on, and you know if the bag goes in the hole, somebody's scoring a point. So if you turn on the TV and you don't know what you're watching, you can't comprehend what it is, you're turning the channel. Why are you going to watch it? So those simple objective outcomes, I think, are important to having a successful sport, at least on TV.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point, right? It's people need to understand what they're watching, especially something like the X Games. You don't really, that's not a year-round thing, right? I remember when I was a kid, I would get pumped for the X Games, like both the winter and the summer games. Like, I would be in front of the television every single night that was on. It was the absolute best, right? You had Travis Pastrana doing his thing, Brian Deegan, if I'm not mistaken, his name. Those dudes were doing incredible things on motorcycles and you know, obviously then snowmobiles and the snowboard cross. Like, so many cool athletes doing so many cool things. The opportunity to be able to put that event on must have been so interesting. I guess from your perspective, like, what were you more focused on, the on-site, the television production, or kind of the blend of all these pieces? Like, what exactly were you doing when it came to, I guess, your day-to-day actually on the field there?
Sure. So it was about 6 months to a year worth of planning for any given X Games. So we were always leapfrogging. If we had 4 events in a year, we were working on 3 and executing 1, essentially. But as part of event operations, you're essentially the glue for all of the other departments, including TV operations and TV production. But everyone kind of filters their needs and their own distinct agendas, which everyone's agenda is the most important agenda. So it was also
biggest problem is my own, right?
Yeah. So it was also up to us to prioritize all that. And really, it was a huge construction project. At times, we were out at LA Live for X Games LA for 5 weeks building this in the midst of Laker games and the Kings parade when they won, and a variety of other things. We built a 110-foot clear span bridge over Figueroa. I mean, it was just this crazy construction project. 90 semis worth of gear were coming in. So we were really responsible. If you were to break it down into a baseball field, we were responsible for everything outside the foul lines. So spectators, security, power fence, tents, scaffolding, etc. And then there was a sports and competition department that handled the on field, if you will, field of play, whether it's athletes or the course design, and a variety of other departments, of course. But
of course.
Yeah. So we were not directly involved with TV production or operations, but we had a piece in it because we had a piece in every department working that event.
Absolutely. You must have been everybody's favorite email, I'm sure, back in those days. And so I'm kind of curious, like what were some of the takeaways that you had? Obviously, we want to talk about OmegaBall. It's a sport. It's a league that you have created. It's similar to soccer, but I'll let you explain it. I don't want to do any I want you to do it the best justice. I'm curious, before we really get into dive into the sport itself, like what were you learning from those events that you kind of kept in the back of your head? Like, if I were to do something, I'd make sure it'd be like this, or I would make sure the fans could do X, Y, and Z. Like, what were some of those things that you were kind of the ideas, the tips, the tricks that you were collecting along the way over your time with ESPN?
Yeah, I think it's all up in the subconscious. But as we were devising OmegaBall, we over analyzing sports business and the generational interest of anyone today, whether you want to call it the TikTok generation or what have you. But we really wanted to make it compact, short, and high energy. Like, can't look away TV. American football, which I adore, there is a lot of downtime. And in some games, there's more time spent on penalties and the review of penalties than actual gameplay. So those are some of the things that we were trying to fix. And OmegaBall really started accidentally. But to your point, I don't think I would have been able to take that idea and execute on it without my background.
I think it's awesome the way you thought about it, though, right? Making sure everything is, you can't look away. Because if you look away, that's when you're going to lose someone, right? Now there's the second screen. I know they've been talking about second screen for a very long time now. And it's understanding how to utilize that second screen, right? It's the statistics. It's the fantasy aspect. Maybe your eyes aren't peeled onto the TV the entire time, but you're looking or you're understanding more about what's going on the TV. And you're totally right. What is it, like 10 minutes and 40 seconds, I think, in a football game of actual football being played? The rest is replays of the play that you just watched from 4 different angles, and the penalties, and we love it. We can't get enough of it, man.
I love it.
140 million people tuned into the Super Bowl. It was incredible. I wouldn't do anything else but watch football if I could.
100%.
I love it. So talk to me about OmegaBall. Like, what exactly is it? Where did the idea come from, and how have you been able to take some of these ideas and implement them within the game that you created?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, it started from a conversation about American football. A good friend and colleague of mine who's actually involved with OmegaBall, Jamie Heeman. We were colleagues at the X Games, and then he went on to be an executive at the NFL Network. He was charged with an upstart American Football League called Pro Pacific, which was similar to the AAFL or even the XFL, but on a lower, more regional level. And he was looking for investors. So I went to another old colleague of ours, Bob Funk, who has a very successful family business in Oklahoma City, and said, hey, do you want to invest in Jamie's football league? And over the course of the conversation, his response ultimately was, I think soccer is the future sport in America, more so than American football.
What year is this?
It's a very good question, because it was during the concussion scandals and the protests, the kneeling protests. So there was definitely some downward pressure on football. We all know football is the king, so we're not going to deny that. But nonetheless, I hung up the phone after Bob telling me that he thinks soccer is worthy of investment more so than American football, and said, why am I not fanatical about soccer? Like, I like it. I watch it if it's on, but I don't tune into it. Why is that? Now, there's the obvious things. It's low scoring, right? Americans don't really like that. But the thing that really got me was offsides. I despise offsides. So my head went to work on fixing that. And I thought maybe if the field was round and the game was played in a more circular manner rather than being linear, would that negate the offsides rule, almost in my own naivete of the rule? So I drew the field in a circle. I put a goal at the north and a goal in the south, and it didn't really fix the problem because we're still playing north-south. And then it was like, well, what if we added a third goal? And it was as simple as that. You can't do that in baseball. You can't do that in football. You can't do that in hockey. You actually could do that in soccer. And that was the foundation of the idea. We continued to refine it. From there, we got rid of throw-ins because nothing exciting ever happens from a throw-in. We made the game much more compact, and the ability to fit into 1 hour of TV was really important to us, which we've accomplished. So it's 3 13-minute periods. It's 3 teams on the field. There's no offsides. It's 10 times more scoring than traditional soccer. And the players love it. It's 5 on the side, a goalie plus 4 in the field. And it's high intensity, high action. We're developing the women's side equally with the men's side as it relates to opportunity and compensation. So we're really excited about that aspect of it. But going back to the catalyst of it, I was able to go back to Bob with this idea. And I knew he owned a minor league hockey team. I did not know he owned Energy FC, which is a USL team. So again, to all of our listeners who have all had ideas, but how do we execute on it? I had the ability to go and borrow Bob's team, like within 2 months. And we did a test match with, it's probably the first sport that was ever invented that had pro players playing in the test match, which was incredible because these guys have been playing for decades, and they came off the field and they were hooting and hollering and sweating, and they had a blast. It's like everyone wants to score, right? And this gives everyone the opportunity to score on a dime. And the goalies actually love it too because they are in the game the entire time. In fact, they have the ability to score. But, in regular soccer, you could daydream if you're a goalie. You cannot daydream in this game.
That's awesome, man. I think I really appreciate the context behind it too, saying like, I came to this, I wanted, the idea was based around trying to get investment funds in some way, shape, or form. Like, I think that's such a great way, like, go to the people that have the money, figure out what they want to invest in, and then create something like that. Like, you kind of reverse engineered, I have this money, what do I do with it, right? Like, okay, cool, how do I get the money? Well, this is what the guy told me he wants. So here, then he'll give me the money. And like, I think it's really awesome that you were then able to also play with, obviously professional players, too, because it's not just me and my buddies in a backyard getting tired after 5 minutes. It's professional athletes. They know what they're doing. You could probably get them to understand the game a little bit easier, and they could be able to kind of, the vision, the idea, the strategy behind it comes much quicker to them, I'm sure. But all this is well and good, right? I'm sure I've had ideas of brand new sports playing, in my backyard when I was 7 years old, and me and my friends probably executed on them. But how do you actually take something like this from ideation to execution with actual capital? Because that is everyone has $1 million idea. It's the execution that everyone gets hung up on. How do you actually take it like that extra mile, that next step that very few people end up actually making it?
Yeah, well, and that's certainly where my background came into play, because I was able to conceptualize what we needed to do to at least play these games. We did another test match with a college team a couple months later back in Oklahoma City. Same result. They really loved it. So then we got to work on creating a tournament, which we did in Orange County 2 years later. So it was about a 2-year runway to get to an actual tournament that ended up airing on FS2 last April, which they still continue to air today, which is great because we're still getting that exposure. But it was a grind, and really it was the athlete. Like, I can produce an event, like especially an event like this. Like, we were building crazy stuff at X Games. This, and the other good thing to OmegaBall is the barrier to entry is so small. Like, you need shorts, cleats, a ball, and a field. And our field is also specifically designed to get 2 OmegaBall fields in a traditional soccer field on purpose. So we would geographically be taking advantage of the land as best as we could. But the players were pretty skeptical. It is an easy transition from soccer. You can do about a 5-minute orientation. Ultimately, you're still just trying to put a ball in the back of the net. So the transition is easy, but to corral the players, the athletes that have some semi-pro, at least semi-pro experience or D1 college experience, what was challenging. And we didn't actually complete the field until the night before the tournament. Like, we still had teams that were short players. So we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? But the fun thing that happened in Orange County was Paul Caligiuri attended the game. And I wasn't familiar with Paul prior to this, but he's a U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. Was responsible for getting the U.S. in the World Cup. His goal got the U.S. in the World Cup for the first time in 40 years in the 80s. So he showed up, and he's been an ambassador for us ever since. So, to answer the question, getting that first game or that first tournament off was challenging, particularly from the player perspective. But that was our best marketing. And the people that came walking up, just that were randomly walking through the Great Park that day, were like, wow, I don't even watch sports, but I would watch this. Because it is intriguing. You got 3 teams on the field, and they're all fighting for the ball. which doesn't happen in any other sport. So we have like vulture plays where team A is trying to score on team B, but team C comes in, steals the ball from team A from behind and actually scores that goal. And from a gambling perspective, like there's all these other propositions that are available in OmegaBall that don't happen in the other games. And so it is, I said no throw-ins earlier, but it's all corner kicks, really like a circle kick, but people can relate to corner kicks, or goal kicks. So that's how the ball goes in, and the ball comes back in like basketball. So there's no delay in the action. And, you know, in regular soccer, if a goalie gets scored on, it's like kind of an event and it's a depressing moment. In OmegaBall, it's like basketball again. It just goes back in and we're back to playing, and the goalie shakes it off and we're back in it.
I love it, dude. That's awesome. So a bunch of things that you touched on that I want to make sure we get to. You talked about FS2, so I want to talk about media rights and TV deals and in your experience with that. I want to talk about, obviously just the creation of the game. But one thing that I really want to get to and make sure we touch upon, the authority factor, right? Having someone from U.S. Soccer, a Hall of Fame member of U.S. Soccer, coming in and being ambassador to this game, how much easier did it make it? And the players themselves talking about how much they enjoyed it. How much easier did it make it when starting to go out on the trail to say, this guy likes it? Like even just being able to quickly say that, or having a simple quote or a testimonial from someone like that, and then all these other professional players, how much easier did that make it when you're out on the recruiting trail, if I may, just getting people to understand the game and businesses to understand the game and media people to understand the game? What was that like, having kind of that in your back pocket?
Look, Paul is incredible, and he is, since I don't come from the soccer world, like having him available is incredible. Like he knows everything. He's got this incredible network, but it is still a grind. Like nothing's easy.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And so, it's coordinate. I mean, everyone's so busy these days, like to have someone come in, because we can't really get college athletes and we can't get pro athletes either because they're under contract with their teams. So finding that middle ground, which is a very small sliver, and them just happening to be available at a given weekend, it's still that's still our toughest part is finding the athletes.
And that makes sense, right? So essentially you're looking for former college athletes who are former pro or have not gone pro for a reason. And that reason probably is because they wanted to make money doing not a real job. They wanted to make money doing another terrible word to use. They wanted to make money doing a job that was not sports because it's very extremely difficult to get money. There we go. I did totally butchered that. We're leaving that in, but that was pretty bad on my part. So how, I guess, what is that like? Like, how are you finding those athletes? How are you putting on these events, making sure that they understand the sport, getting them to actually want to come to the sport? Like, what are you guys doing?
Well, it's word of mouth for us. Our social channels are doing pretty well. We had a TikTok video hit 1 million views and on and on. So I think the familiarity is becoming more prevalent out in the space, but it's still, and from our perspective, we just have to commit. So our next event will be in the middle of June in San Diego, and then we'll have an event in Chicago in the middle of July. Our national championship for this year is December 8 and 10 in Melbourne, Florida. That's already set. So we're kind of bookending the season up to that. And we don't have it's not a pro league yet. We're just still doing tournaments similar to how the PLL started, which is probably our best example or sample of how we're trying to progress the game and the organization of it. But we have to commit to this, and even if it's that last minute grind where we don't have the players the night before, like what happened in Orange County, we just have to fight through that. And we actually had a couple players play on 2 different teams on the women's side for that event. So that's what we have to do. But if we're not committed, the players aren't going to be committed. So that's where we're at this point.
100% true. And I guess I'm kind of curious, how are you guys looking at it from like a push-pull strategy in terms of like the marketing? Like, are we looking for people to say, hey, I want to go to a OmegaBall event? Are we looking for people to say, I want to play in this event? Like, what are you guys doing to make sure that you have the audience, but you also have the people that want to come play and the people that kind of want to watch them play? Because if you don't have one, you don't really have the other.
Yeah, so it's a great question and very relevant. So as you're growing a sport, as you know, you either start bottom and
I don't
go
know.
up. Okay, so it's either like spike ball. Spike ball started at the bottom with a product, and they grew up to a pro league. Some sports started at the pro league and worked their way down, and then then they kind of develop a product and a recreational or competitive youth organization around it. We had planned on doing top down because that's what we know. We know athletes, pro athletes in TV. Right after we aired on FS2 in April, we were contacted by an executive, Craig Scrivens from USSSA, which is United States Specialty Sports Association, which is the largest multi-sport recreational organizer in the U.S. They're in all 50 states. And they said, hey, I saw this on the treadmill. We want to get involved with this. So immediately, rather than being top down, we were doing both at the same time because we signed a deal with USSSA, and they are handling all the rec component, U18 and under, for OmegaBall in the U.S. And their first tournament is April 7th and 8th in Omaha, Nebraska, with competitive youth. It'll be U15 to U12. So they're running with it. They had planned on doing 8 events this year. They're approaching 16 to 20 tournaments because the interest from kids is extraordinary, which we love. Like, if we can get kids off the couch with this, I mean, it's super beneficial to everybody. So we're excited about and we get cold emails every day from kids or coaches of kids like, I want to play this. And for kids that are intimidated by the size of soccer or the size of the team, the length of the game, you want to get out on the field and kick a ball and have a little bit more of an impacted experience as it relates to activating. OmegaBall is perfect for that.
That is awesome. I like that. And, as you said, you kind of changed your strategy on the fly a little bit there because there was that opportunity. How easy is it to just let USSSA just handle all aspects or whatever aspects they need to so that you guys can focus on the professional, the top tier, and the media and everything around kind of marketing the game while they build from that bottom up?
Yeah, there's definitely a trust factor, but we've had lots of meetings and we are very protective of our brand, of course. I mean, there's kids involved with this. So we need to be protective and make sure that we're putting our best foot forward across the board. But they've been around since 1960. They have this, it's a very well established organization. But it's new for them too. So it's a huge educational process to everyone. Once they get it, they get it. But we're still not a brand name, right? So there's a lot of work to be done there.
Yet we're not a brand name yet, but you have made it, man. You're on the For the Love of Sports podcast, so I don't think I mean FS2, get out of here. So yeah, let's I want to talk about the sport. As you said, you're very protective of your brand, right? So you have this sport, you have this league that you're creating. You're now creating and helping create and getting to create recreational leagues across the country eventually at some point, right? But the potential for all 50 states is there, which is awesome. How, you brought up the PLL before. I'm going to bring up pickleball. Pickleball is, first off, not a fun sport to watch. It is an incredibly fun sport to play. I don't understand why there's now all these Major League Pickleball and watch these events. I couldn't care less. It's really boring to watch, but it's a lot of fun to play. And as you said, you've created this sport around understanding it needs to be fun to watch because if people don't watch it, who the hell cares? So from that perspective, how are you paying attention to what the PLL did, paying attention to what pickleball did in terms of controlling the sport and even the narrative around it? Because pickleball, I think there's 4 different leagues now, 3 different leagues, 2 different leagues, and some of them are merging and they're doing a lot of different stuff. And people are kind of just oh, we're going to put some courts in Central Park now or something like it's just a bunch of random shit that seems like it's happening with no coercive, understanding, governing body. How are you guys trying to be, the opposite of that, making sure that you can kind of control everything top to bottom to make sure that this is all moving in the same direction rather than having fighting factions between each other?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do control the vertical from a trademark perspective. So OmegaBall is trademarked in the U.S. and 50 other countries. We should talk about international before we hang up because there's some progress there too. But we are obviously first to market, but we feel like we're planting a pretty good flag with OmegaBall and the fact that we have it trademarked. Certainly somebody can develop some similar sport, but our field is also sized perfectly, where if it got bigger, it would expand past the sidelines of a football field or a soccer field. And if it got any smaller, it'd be too small. So we're kind of locked in at this size. And OmegaBall is a very specific term. So, it's interesting. After I started this, a lot of soccer teams do 3 teams as a drill. there's a drill that I was unaware of that has happened. So this concept has been around.
I don't believe in luck, but it seems like you get very fortunate with some of these things that just kind of happen to happen, such as this 3-team drill, such as that gentleman showing up that one particular day, such as the guy that gave you some investor money just happened to have a soccer team along the way. Like, it's very you're always in the right place at the right time. I'll give you that, Anthony. Next thing I want to talk about, so we understand how you guys are looking at it compared to a sport like pickleball, like lacrosse. I think it's very important, again, for you to kind of control the narrative because there's just so much shit going on in those sports. Now they've been around a little longer, we could say. But I am also curious about TV rights. Now, I know obviously you've brought up FS2 a couple times. Cross my fingers, you're going to have a lot more there. But talk to me a little bit about, I know if I'm not mistaken, you guys had some ESPN 8 conversations. You were on ESPN 8, the Ocho, for anyone out there listening or watching. You don't know, ESPN 8 is like this hilarious day on ESPN 2 in the middle of August when it's just baseball, where they just air all these wacky sports, slippery stairs, and just like all this crazy shit. It's just fun to watch. Understanding like those sports are kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit. What was the conversation around saying, like, do we even want to be on ESPN? We're trying to be a professional sport. We're trying to be a real league. Like, what were those conversations around, like being considered a real sport versus, but now we're on ESPN and we can at least say we'd be on it? Like, what are those conversations like?
Yeah, it's the way you're positioning it is exactly the thought process, because to your point, you don't want to come off as a circus sideshow. We want to be a legitimate sport. We are a legitimate sport. If you talk to the athletes or if you see them come off the field after a game, you can tell that they've just participated in a real sport. But the exposure is too much to ignore, and that's all there is to it. And that was the bottom line. In fact, we're considering it again this year because we did get a lot of exposure off that, and then ESPN continues to air it on ESPN News. They aired it 2 weeks ago, and the website popped, and we got all these inquiries. And with the USSSA component, it's so easy people are like, I want to play. And we have this opportunity and this licensing deal, for lack of a better term, with USSSA. So it's too much to ignore. To your point, ultimately, we don't want to spend the rest of our lives on the Ocho next to slippery stairs, which is not a real sport. It's a stunt, right, at best. But we have to take what we can get now and get out. And we need the exposure.
Absolutely, yeah, and it completely makes sense, especially this early on in the life of the sport. Like, I totally get where you're coming from, and slippery stairs is just hilarious. So
it is. We were there on site. We actually did a live game of OmegaBall next to slippery stairs, so it was fun to watch live, opposed to pickleball. But even with Kendall Baker at Axios, if you're familiar with him, he came up and, because we were on the Ocho, said that OmegaBall was his favorite emerging sport, and even that got us a lot of momentum off that, which was great.
And then you also talked about, obviously, I guess more on a real sport level, like the FS2 conversation that we've been kind of beating around the bush here a little bit. Like, what was it like when you guys were able to complete that deal? What does that look like? It sounds like they keep re-airing it. Must mean that they are getting good numbers. I mean, Bassmaster Classic's great, don't get me wrong, but like, I'd probably want to watch OmegaBall. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys were able to get that deal and what that's been able to do for you guys, considering they continue to run this on a consistent basis, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's been incredible for us. It's interesting. People assume that with my sports television background, that was an easy chess piece to lay down, but it wasn't. I mean, I was at ESPN, this ended up on Fox, and it was the 3-team component that really intrigued them. They were like, it's FS2, it's whatever, arguably their throwaway channel. So what's the harm in it? But the thing that all the networks say they love, even though we don't have a network deal yet, is that the games are an hour long. So it's super easy to program. You don't have this 2.5 hour to 3.5 hour bullet that you're trying to insert into your overall programming schedule. So I think that's why FS2 really likes it, because if they have a gap of an hour anywhere, they can pop this in, and it's pretty intriguing. But it was really presenting to them and saying, we've got 3 teams on the field at once. There's nothing else like that. And they went for it pretty quickly.
How often are they running this? Like, how often are you guys seeing pops in the website? Is this a weekly thing? Is this a couple times a month potentially?
They ran it about, so our contract was they promised us 4 airings of both men and women each, and they ended up airing it over 60 times last year.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so 8 to 60. That's pretty solid.
Yeah. So it's probably not airing right now. It tailed off towards the end of last year, but we did get a note yesterday that they may start re-airing it. But we have new content. So after Great Park in March, which aired in April on FS2, then we did the Ocho in August, and then we did another event, which is on our YouTube channel, which was in Carson, where the Galaxy play at Dignity Health Sports Complex, and those games were incredible because the players are starting to get it now. We actually had teams that had played before in Carson, the third event of last year, that we had never had that experience. So it was pretty exciting.
So not really understanding kind of how these TV deals work, it sounds like you guys supply them with the content. It sounds like you guys air or tape,
Produce.
edit, get it produced, thank you,
Yeah.
the event, and then you send to them and you say, here, you guys can use this however you'd like. Is that essentially how it works?
Yeah, it is, and we share the commercial inventory. So if there was 12 commercials within that hour, we would have 6 to give to our sponsors, which we're limited. We're still struggling on investment. We're still struggling on sponsors. The struggles of a startup, right, exist still. And then they would get the other 6 pieces of inventory.
That's pretty cool, man. Well, kudos and congratulations. I think that's absolutely fantastic. The fact that they aired it that many times, clearly, I mean, that's over once a week, right? Like, clearly there is something there. Clearly I hope they come back. I hope you guys get some more deals. I hope you can give them more content. But in case people, just don't happen upon FS2 at the time that this is playing, it sounds like we can go to your YouTube page and just watch some of these full-length games. I'm sure you have a lot of different content up there.
Yeah, we have the games, we've got features, we've got a rules video. So there's a rules video on there that runs down all the rules of OmegaBall, and some other fun stuff on there. But it's good. And like I said, the TikTok, one of those bits went viral, and that was a vulture play off a corner kick, and then the goalie took it out of their goal, and he scored a goal from his goal. So it was like 2 goals.
Saw that.
In 3 seconds. So
I do remember seeing that on the internet
Yeah.
somewhere. That's awesome. Look at that. And so I guess I'm kind of curious, like kind of almost making this conversation a little full circle. Like, we started talking about the human interest piece of sports, and the documentaries, and the based on a true stories. How much are you guys leaning into the athletes, their personalities, who they are, in some of this content? Because people always love learning about people, good or bad. Heels always rock, right? Like, everyone loves a good heel in sports. Like, how are you guys kind of navigating that aspect of the sport?
We're trying. We recognize that the characters are a piece of sports, right? It's part of the story arc. So we're eager. We're fumbling a little bit with it because these guys are all over the country. Our best team, and these guys are great. We got 2 great teams, which we would call Drift, who's in LA, and Crush, who's in South Carolina. Both have characters on their team, but it's corralling these guys and getting an appropriate setup and getting inserted into their busy schedule. So I think as we gain momentum, we'll have a little bit more, enough prestige to maybe fly somebody out, or have enough funding to fly somebody out and really do some fun things with them. But we're really concentrating on the sport on the field right now, and hopefully that stuff starts to layer in. And there's expenses to behind the scenes footage. We've talked to documentary makers about it, and they're like, yeah, if you pay me, I'll come do your documentary. And we're like,
shoot, do you want to do it for free though?
Yeah, this will be good, I promise.
That's awesome.
So we'll see, but we're definitely out in the investment marketplace trying to get our next round of funding so we can continue on with the momentum that we've created.
That's awesome, man. Well, kudos and congratulations. I think it's so cool that you're able to come up with something like this, and not only just kind of have the idea and play around in a backyard, but actually get professional athletes to play it, enjoy it, and create their own teams around it. Like, you don't see that too often. So kudos and congratulations there, man. I think obviously the FS2 stuff is incredible. Hopefully you get some more publicity there, and the more kids we can get involved. I have no idea about TV or contracts or anything like that, but just do it in the summer. The only thing that's on is baseball, and baseball's my favorite sport. But like, you got to do it in the summer because there's nothing else on. It's the easiest thing in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely. Well, that's the thing. We went to the networks. And we're like, tell us when you want us to be on. We can do whatever we want. And you were talking about federations earlier. We're not getting involved with federations. We're going to steer our own ship. We want to be nimble, and the way to do that is to stay away from federations. And internationally, we've had a ton of interest. So even soccer traditional countries like Spain, our first country that we're going to sign an OmegaBall deal with is in Spain, with Uruguay to follow. We're in conversations with the UK and Brazil. So the international, like people have seen this on international feeds, whether it was ESPN or FS2, and it's the same result where like, that looks fun, I want to play it, and we get cold emails daily about it.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense to try this in soccer-loving countries, right? It's just another way for them to play soccer, a more exciting way to play the game that they've loved that, again, doesn't have to be as long or as arduous as the traditional game. It's just, hey, you play regular soccer, let's call it on Saturdays, and OmegaBall on Sundays. Why not, right?
Yeah, there's a couple pieces to that, but we were concerned that the traditionalists would hate on us, and of course we've received some of those messages.
Yeah, people suck. Who cares?
Yeah, one of my favorite ones was Americans being Americans.
That's pretty. I like that. That's funny.
Yeah, that was a great one. But also another thing that we've conceptualized and haven't put into practice yet is, kids and families are doing the tournaments. Like, you're driving in for 5 hours to go to a tournament. If you get knocked out early, driving back home, or the losers of the soccer tournament could feed into an OmegaBall tournament. You don't have to go home so quickly. So nice. We're looking at all those kinds of opportunities as well.
And so you said you're signing deals with Spain and England. Like, what exactly? Yeah, what are you guys signing? Like, what does that mean?
Right. So there's organizations like USSSA in Spain. Great question, and good that we're clarifying it. That have reached out to us and said, hey, we want to embrace this, which is great, because ultimately there's the Little League World Series formula where the international countries play, and then they come to the U.S. and we'll play a world championship. But everyone's been so gracious, like, we like OmegaBall, and we want to be involved with OmegaBall. We like what you guys are doing. So there really hasn't been any splintering like you see in pickleball. Everyone's coming to us. And these deals are getting signed, and I think that's going to be our biggest moat, which we're tickled about. Like, we want everyone to be a part of the family and the community, and get these kids playing a sport that's really fun.
And so with that, like, you have all these kids that want to play. You have professional athletes already playing. How, like, when can you go full bore? When can you go full steam ahead? Like, where are the investors? Why are they not giving you millions of dollars to say, Anthony, do whatever you need to do to get this in front of as many people, because it seems like people want to play? I'm sure you've asked yourself this question, but what am I missing about these conversations that you're having behind the scenes?
I asked Jamie that, or my colleague who has done a few investment deals, and of course he's a lawyer and was at the NFL Network, VP of Business Affairs, and I asked him that, and he said, we're being too honest. He's like, the investors, it's too smooth. Like, investors want a moonshot or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It's too organized. And I don't know if he was kind of busting my balls or what, but it made me laugh thinking about that. But I don't know. We did get some initial investment, but that has gone invested into last year. So now we're in this weird limbo phase where we got this incredible momentum, but we don't have that next round of funding. But we run very efficiently. We've got a great product. Obviously, it's an interesting economic time that we need to navigate, which I'm sure has something to do with it. And then it always takes longer than you want. Just that's all there is to it. So.
Ain't that the truth? Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on and explaining this incredible sport. Also, your time at ESPN obviously has filtered and fed into what you're doing. We already talked about the YouTube, but where else could we learn? I guess give us all, if we want to reach out, if anyone has questions, where can they go to learn? Give us all that stuff.
Yeah, www.omegaball.com. I guess you don't have to say the W's anymore, but omegaball.com, TikTok, YouTube. YouTube's got a great library of content on it, but you can leave us messages on the website, and naturally, the rules are on the website, the rules videos on YouTube. So all the social channels are available to everyone that's out there.
I love it, man. Good stuff. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the audience for theirs. Time's the only thing we don't get more of, so really sincerely do thank you for that. But other than that, man, this has been awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to keeping you updated on OmegaBall.
Yeah, whenever you guys have something cool, come on and we'll update everybody on it. How's that sound?
I love it. All right. Thanks, Michael.
Good stuff. Thanks, man. Bye, everybody.